Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Veterans Club live show here today. We have a very special guest, Cheryl Cross, a leading voice in the military to civilian community. Today, she's going to share some of her insights and profound insights on the transformation from transforming military skills into civilian lifelong triumphs. Today's conversation, we're going to talk about the ongoing process of transitioning, right? She's also going to share some of her strategies. I got a little tongue twister. Share some of her strategies from her book. And we're also going to do a little bit of a deep dive on understanding the journey of transitioning as a veteran. Today's conversation should be meaningful, should have some great dialogue. So we're really excited to have you guys here with us. We will get started right after this.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, wherever you are at, because we have people all the way from Hawaii. Is that how you say it? Hawaii? From Hawaii. We have
Hawaii.
overseas. Hawaii, yes, from Hawaii, from overseas, the East Coast, the West Coast, the Midwest. So greetings to where you coming in from, joining us here at the Veterans Club. Today we have awesome Miss Cheryl. I tell you what, I wish I would have known Cheryl back when I was transitioning out, because this journey that I've taken in the last 5.5 years, I'm still learning things that, like, man, if I wish I would have learned this when it was my transition time a little bit after, I probably would have been further along. But now we have the subject matter. When I tell you that Cheryl is like the SME, and she's out there on the and imagine Hawaii, like. So Cheryl, what time is it over there? 'Cause right now I'm in the middle. I'm in San Antonio, Texas. So it's 11 o'clock here. So I'm sure it's what, like 6, 7 o'clock over.
7 in the morning. Good
Look at that.
morning.
7 in the morning. And that's to show y'all dedication, right? That's to show, like, hey, I'm gonna get up. I'm gonna meet y'all where you're at, because I have information. And thank y'all for coming in to hey, get your pad and pen ready, because it's gonna be phenomenal. I tell you right now. And I'm gonna pass it over to LJ, because Michelle, I tell you, she has her podcast. She's doing things that help military transition from the military environment to the civilian environment. She's an HR specialist, so that means that she knows behind the scenes how you get into the industry. What industry is that? The industry that you're trying to transition out of military service to the civilian sector. Okay, so I just want to pass it over, and thank you everybody for coming in. Like I said, today is going to be action packed, and then we're going to roll into the after show, because we're going to want people to come up to the stage and ask more questions, because Cheryl's like, look, I got some answers I want to share with everybody to make it an easier transition, to make it a smoother ride for when you transition. Thanks.
Okay, Kings.
LJ, okay, here we go.
All right. So our opening, I want to understand the lifelong transition, right? Because that was a term that I wasn't really aware of when I first got out the military full time. I'm a reservist. I drill now as a reservist, but I did know that people think that when you transition, that's that's the end. And you mentioned that a few times when I was looking over some of the notes you sent me. Why is that important? I guess a concept for veterans to understand. Let's open with that.
You bet. First off, thank you so much. Kings, I want you to wake me up every morning, please. Can I just get you on my alarm? I'm just going to have a recording of you going, good morning. You need to wake up. LJ, you and I, we've talked before, and one of the things we did talk about was how transition isn't just a one-time thing. And I'm hearing this from so many people who are transitioning 1 to 4 years, 5+ years, people who are in the soup, which is the folks that I really want to put on my podcast. And each episode, we look at how everybody's handling this at different stages. So in my research is kind of what I'm doing as this podcast host for these transitioning military, is to see kind of where they're at mentally, physically. And I'm telling you, transition is not a one-time thing. And I think the benefit of thinking this way is that you realize that when you've been in an enculturated or an institutionalized or a very specific environment, and you're moving to one that's really organic, it's super fungible. I love that word. That's such a corporate world word. Fungible, flexible, that you are going into this great unknown. And when I was recruiting people as a former corporate recruiter, I'd hear them say, I'm going into the deep abyss. I'm going into the unknown. And I thought to myself, no, you're just going to go get a job. When I didn't understand then that I understand now, because of the great stories of people like yourself, because of Kings, Joe, Lakeisha, I'm sure you have one too. I want you to know that this is the way that you can give yourself grace is to realize that you're going to get out. You might not love your first job. The choices you have in the corporate world or the civilian world are vast. You can leave that job. You probably couldn't pick your MOS in the military. So that's, I think, where the fear is, and that's where the perfectionism comes in to folks. And by the way, I'm not a psychologist. I'm just a former corporate recruiter. I just saw a lot of this stuff, and I'm here to try and bridge the gap.
Have you found that veterans have to, and I have it here on the scroll here, have to at some point almost reinvent themselves when they get out of the service? Because like with Kingsley, and I'll bring him up in a moment, but what he did in the military is completely different than what he's doing now as a civilian. And I think that a lot of veterans feel like they're going to get, say you were law enforcement, you're going to get out and do law enforcement. Do you feel like veterans struggle when they have to do that process, or what have you found in your experience?
I think they do because a lot of folks don't want to do what they've done for the last 10, 15 years. This is the beauty of starting early. You can get certifications. You can tune into Jay Salter's Act Now education. You can get free resources through the post 9/11 GI Bill. You can use that SkillBridge programs, that time to get certed up. It depends, again, getting an early start on transition into a different career is where my head's at. This is where I stand on top of the rooftops and yell because being unprepared for whatever it is, even if you don't love it and you want to pivot, you got to be confident when you get in because a job is a really important part of your life, even if it's just a job, right? It's a lot of hours, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of impact to you, your family, everything.
And talk about transitioning. I wanted to kind of transition into talking more about the book that you wrote, the guide that you wrote. Could you tell us a little bit about your book, the title, and why you decided to write a book to help veterans in this space?
Sure. Thank you so much. And before I hire you as my PR agent, I'll let you know that the name of the book is Civilian Mission. It is a 3-year guide for military professionals planning civilian careers. So it's for your planners out there. And I'm pretty sure that all the planners have bought it because the book has, since its release on Veterans Day 2023, has sold like hotcakes. It's sold out occasionally on Amazon. As of yesterday, I have released it on Ingram Spark. So hopefully we'll get distribution into some of the bases and to some of the PXs and, you know, just wider access for people who might see it, who might buy it for a family member. But the whole reason I wrote this, LJ, is because I saw a need. I saw a bunch of people coming to me saying, as a corporate recruiter, what do you got? And when I asked them, what do they want for salary? What's your salary expectations? I don't know. My second book, which will be released this year, is going to be called Unlocking Your Worth. And I'm dedicating it to those brave service members who are becoming vets who said, I don't know. I think that's very brave, but I wanted to create guides so they could figure out how to go from the we mindset of the military to the me mindset of trying to figure out what your skills, your interests, how those combine, and how you can really step forward boldly into a career that you love.
It's funny because when I saw like veterans love checklists, right? So when you write it in the form of a way that we are used to, it's like, did you take that into consideration when you were planning out this book, like the
I
target and
did.
how they would? Okay, go ahead. I was like, all right.
I did. I just didn't want a lot of bullshit in there. I just didn't want a lot of fluff. You know, it's my friend Laura Schmiegel at Orion Talent. She laughed. She's a leading voice in the military spouse movement and hiring our heroes, Blue Star families. And she said to me, "It reads like a recipe book." And I thought, well, she cooks. I don't cook, but she cooks. So that's quite a compliment. I didn't want it to be complicated. And when you see it, it's rather when I picked it up, when I got it back, the first, they call it a proof, I thought, "Oh my gosh, it's thin." And then immediately I thought, "No, but this is something I would buy because I could hang on to this for 3 years. It's not overwhelming. It's something I can read when I need it. It's a resource. I can go to it because 3 years is a long time to have a book. Quite frankly, we don't read books anymore, right? It's all on YouTube, it's on the internet, it's bits and pieces, it's things you've learned through TAPS or ETAPS.
It's this
So
podcast.
it's this podcast, exactly. It's all the voices who are helping those voices who need to be heard, in my opinion, to get out there and tell their stories. And honestly, the reason I started the podcast, because I know you're going to ask that next, is that I was sick and tired of having that guy. That guy always was on a panel. That guy meaning, and it's a proverbial guy. And if you're listening and you're been out of the military for 20 years and you're a hugely successful CEO making squillions of dollars, I applaud you, man. Please join me on LinkedIn. Maybe you can hire me for your corporate something. But that guy sat on these panels, and what I saw were transitioning service members with their notes, writing down like they were going to not pass a test. All the things that this person said, like, oh, yeah, yeah. And they didn't remember, they didn't even have TAPS class when they got out. It had been so long that they, quite frankly, they forgot. They forgot. And to say that that's the epitome of what you want to be when you get out, when this person hadn't been in the service for 10, 15 years, I was like, that's not what they need to see. What they need to see or hear are the stories of people going, this sucks. I'm scared. This is awful. I'm stuck in Europe. I've been med boarded out. I had an Air Force person say to me, oh my gosh, I keep being told by the military this is going to take a month. It's been 6 months. I have had to renew my leases. I don't know if I'm going to be sent back to my home of record. I haven't been able to get a job. My family doesn't know. Like she was upside down. Fortunately, her situation worked out. But those are the stories. And hearing how they persevered, their resilience, I think you will remember those stories better than reading a book, even though I wrote one.
And by the way, if you haven't done so already, go on Amazon, go all the places. We keep it real simple. Have it right here. I want to bring up a few of the other veterans that are part of this panel. It's kind of fortunate that we have a kind of a motley crew today, like a smaller crew today, so we can kind of open up the discussion a bit earlier. I was going to go to Lakeisha, but I see there's a look in Joe's eyes, like he has a question. So I'm gonna kick it to Joe. Go ahead, brother. What you got?
Okay. There are a few things that are in our outline that really stood out to me, and especially hearing from Cheryl talk about it. So the lifelong transition. So like, I've always had this belief that we're a culmination of our life's experiences and the environment around us, right? That really kind of dials who we are. So I was just curious, as you've gone through these things helping veterans transition into like careers, because you were a corporate recruiter and all that. Would you say that transition, that lifelong transition, is more of adapting to a new environment and not necessarily changing who you are? Because I've also come up with this thought that too many veterans get wrapped up in, I can't be a veteran anymore. I can't be a Marine. I can't be an airman. I can't be a soldier. I can't be a sailor, right? Like, and that mindset kind of turns them out to things that are really important and successful in our progression, because there's valuable tools that we learn. So could you elaborate on that part of like adapting or transitioning? Is it really a transition, or is it more of an adaptation? And I'd love to hear you kind of elaborate on that, because you in that experience.
Yeah, this is a conversation that needs to be had, and it needs to have conversations with your family. You need to be checked on this constantly. Again, I'm going to sound like an armchair psychologist. Just know I'm not a psychologist. I'm just a fan. So I'm sitting here like I'm going to do on Sunday for the Super Bowl, and I'm going to hope that the Chiefs win. No offense to anybody who likes 49ers. Okay, so you're brave, you're skilled, you're strong, you're trained. All these things are great things. I end my show with it, but I truly believe that you do not need to remake yourself. And I think, like you said, Joe, this is such a common misperception and misconception. I think that the corporate world thinks that you need to remake yourself, and that individuals thinking they need to please the corporate world or the civilian world think they need to redo that. Please don't. But what, we ask you to do, and you'll realize when you get that sort of blank stare from the folks that you're interviewing with, when you start talking very militaristic, meaning military terms, maybe your audience isn't quite aligned to what you did. It's a way that you are able to truly talk about what you've done in a way that is compelling. And it doesn't mean you have to remake yourself. Please don't. I don't care if you're unemployed for 6 months. As you find that thing that you want to do, that you can step boldly into as a career, you've got to do the homework. You've got to do the self work, which is why I say start the process 3 years early. It's not that and again, this is so hard, you guys. Think about your last PCS. You're just starting a new MOS. Yay, new location, or, your family is just unpacking the boxes and you're thinking of leaving. You haven't dropped your papers yet. You kind of have to do this on the down low, because I've heard the shade that you guys get, you guys and gals, and those who don't identify as either. But the folks that are truly dropping their papers, they're like stuck in the corner. Like, oh, you're leaving us? Okay, go fold envelopes over here. So there's so many of these things I'm hearing through the stories that I'm interviewing folks for the podcast. So I think my hope as a corporate recruiter who received so many transitioning former military spouses, that's a whole other conversation. I don't want you to remake yourself. I want to see who you are, but I want to know that you've done the homework to figure out what it is you want to do. And sometimes that is your past MOS, and sometimes it's a completely different dream. And there are dream makers out there. I mentioned Act Now Education. There's Onwards to Opportunity. There's so many. There's so many. I can't mention them all, but there's so many places you can dial in. The Veteran Service Organization is a great place to start. You can kind of sneak in and maybe do it at your Military Family Support Center too, and just say, hey, give me a template for a resume. Go online. You can do a lot of this quietly. Reach out to people who are already established. Get that person that's been out about a year, not so long that they're sitting at the end of a panel in a 3-piece suit looking like, just completely out of sync with Hawaii. By the way, anybody that shows up in a suit in Hawaii, we know they don't belong here, because you got to wear aloha shirts here. But don't be that guy. And if you are that guy, and I've interviewed great that guys, Darrell Williams, who's the head of people services at DISA, he's a boss, but he gives back to this community daily. He's talking to them daily. He's mentoring and coaching and giving back. Find those people, because they've heard your story 100 times and they can help. Thanks for asking that.
That was great. That was a great question, Joe. I wanted to go over to Miss Mosley. How you doing this morning? Thank you for joining us again.
I am so wonderful. Thank you so much, LJ. This is the thing. This is a great conversation. Cheryl, I would like to definitely just know about, when we talk about your personal journeys and adapting with your environment, how are you able to cope with that, changing the transition? If you have family, how are you able to bring them aboard, and how are you able to continue on doing what you want to do moving forward?
Yeah, I can't speak as a veteran because I am a civilian. My father served very briefly in the Army during the Korean War. It changed his life. That's another impetus for me writing the book. But I can tell you that, beyond what I've seen, what I would hope is that you carry everything you've done very proudly. If it's 2 years or 32 years, or I've met people who've been in the service 38 years with combined service, you bring that to the fore proudly. What I find is interesting, Lakeisha, and I want to bring this up, I hope I can bring it up in your segment, is I see with people like us, these type of podcasts, people getting a lot more, I think, familiar and friendly with what they thought they know about military people to what is happening with military folks, the training they're getting, the way they're entering the workforce. 200,000 people are leaving the military every single year. That's a dump into the workforce of America or wherever they go. A lot of them want to be vetrepreneurs. A lot of them want to do exactly what they did, to not have a break because they quite frankly cannot afford not to have a job. For those who are having gaps in their employment, the federal government, has stood up WIOA, which is the Workforce Innovation Act of America, and Wagner Pizer. There's all of these gaps, the workforce opportunity tax credit. Corporations who hire veterans who have been unemployed for a certain amount of time can get up to $9,600. We all have our eyes on getting you working. You are too talented, too skilled, too brave, too technical, too skilled to not be working. But sometimes there's missteps, right? It's not always, and this job market is so bizarre, right? Everybody's like, I don't want to do that. I want to go be a YouTube. I want to be like you guys. I want to have StreamYard. I want to have this. I want to have that. So there's all these things that are happening, potentially having a recession. I don't know if we're still in inflation, if we're calling it that yet. There's all of these things that are happening and conceptions. So to hopefully answer your full question, the most promising thing I see are people within corporations are really advocating. Don't let me forget to talk more about what's called a business resource group. If you're looking into companies, meaning you, the person that's looking for a job, either post-military or you're already out of the service, find those companies that have veterans groups, and then find someone who's in that veteran group and find out how they treat you. And I mean that, because companies need to be held, their feet need to be held to the fire. They're getting tax incentives to hire you. They're getting tax credits if you've been unemployed and they hire you. So what are they doing to receive that lovely bounty? And I personally, as an HR consultant, I make them responsible. A big chain here, hospitality chain, I won't say the name, has asked me to come and stand in front of their hiring managers and talk to them about the importance of hiring military and family dependents. And I thought, how long has the military been in Hawaii, and how long has this hotel been here, or these 9 hotels? Why do they not know this? But thank you. We will refresh their memories. I'm glad to do it. It's my honor. Thank you so much. And, again, more people need to be doing that. The tide is turning. The tide is turning. And then lastly, I want to bring something up. With all of the federal incentives and the focus on military spouses, I think this helps a lot. If you remember that, I think the stats are like 50% of service members are married. Traditionally, because of the let's just say the makeup of the military, only 15% of military folks are female, right? So majority male, majority of those spouses are female. So you have a majority female military spouse, not all. And I know a ton of male military spouses, and I love you, and non-traditional marriages too. But when these folks enter into the workforce and their resume says that they've done volunteer work because they had shitty locations, they didn't know what to do. They had to go work at that craft store on the base because that was the only job available. And maybe they got $5 an hour, and they have 2 master's degrees. Be kind to those folks. They didn't have choices. They've chosen to support an active duty service member. That is I get goosebumps. That's a challenge. But what you're getting is somebody that not just knows how to unpack and pack boxes constantly, someone's up to 20 times in their lifetime, but it's their flexibility, it's their resilience, it's their adaptability. You're getting somebody that hopefully, even if it's for 2 years, and damn the hiring managers that say, so is your husband an active duty? Is he in the Marines? Yeah, what does he do? Does he shoot people? Just ignore those people. Those are unethical questions. Smile and call me and get me on LinkedIn. I'll tell you how to answer those and get away with that. But honestly, it's none of their business who you're married to. It's none of their business how long you're going to be there. It should be your value and what you bring to the company. And nobody, by the way, in the younger generations is staying more than 2 years. So you're kind of coming into the norm. Thanks for asking that question. Lakeisha, did I miss anything from that big question you just asked?
No, that was perfect. That was truly perfect, Cheryl. Thank you so much for answering it.
And actually, because of that, thank you guys, because that question, that segment, actually, I forgot to tell you guys before the show, is I actually wanted to transition to the next segment. So I wanted briefly, keep it under a minute or two. We'll go to Kings, then Joe, myself, and Lakeisha. We'll say the best for last. I want you to briefly share with us the story of how you adapted post-military. So during that transition, because today we're talking about beyond that discharge. So after you discharged, where was it a part? I don't care if it was professional or personal where you adapted. We'll start with Kings because he's been patiently waiting. But please share that story how you had to adapt.
And I appreciate Cheryl for you coming in to share your side from not coming through the military channels in that sense, right? For some, it's easy if if we have a like, hey, this is my date, I'm getting out, right? So then you have the option to start planning out. But then, as some military folks like myself, I didn't have that option because I wasn't thinking about transition out when I did, right? I was uh medically discharged. So, a lot of my stuff got fast forward. So I like, oh man, okay, I didn't know what to do. Even though I've been in for a long period of time, because that wasn't my goal. My goal was to complete as long as I could, right? So I wasn't thinking about transition. First, I wasn't even thinking about coming in, right? So now I was like, okay, I made it in. So then I know a lot of veterans now, and the ones I talk to that's transitioning out. My transition was 5 years ago, but the transition that's happening now, like the information is outdated, I guess. So what I do is I make sure that I keep tapped in to the fresh source. And I always, so now I'm in the tech sector. So I always like relate stuff to tech, and I tell people all the time, like, we can't even keep our phones on for 1 year without it being updated constantly, right? For all the vulnerability that comes across. So I had to kind of relate that to my transition. That when I speak to the young veterans that are transitioning out, it's like, oh, this is not how we do it now. It's done like this, but it's still, you have to find the common goal, right? Like, okay, your transition, like, and I tell people, like, once you transition out, you might not want to do, you have to do what you have to do to pay the bills, right? But in that time, you could start looking for something that's gonna, um, one, pay the bills, two, to get into something of your passion so you could keep like your continuing to contribute, because adapting, that's one thing I know that the military veteran community can do. And just like you talk about, we have dependents on, I don't even like to call them dependent, we have the people that's walking along with us that's not serving in uniform, but they're serving as a spouse or as a supporter. Imagine them being humbled with 2 master's degrees and have to go work at the auto hobby shop or work at the arts and craft just to support their military member. But then I tell people, I say, you could use that as leverage, because you like, look, I humbled myself enough to support. Yes, that was a pay cut, but look, this is what I've done. This is how I made it better when I left. And then that way, for me, companies could see like, wow, we could inject this person into making this program better, making this section better, because it's not about the accolades they bring, it's about the accolades they have inside and how they could contribute. So I just want to say thank you for highlighting that, because a lot of times as veterans, I see when I came in the service, I had to transition or adapt to coming into the military because I didn't have no military experience. And then when I was in, I got used to that environment. But then when it was time for me to transition back to the civilian sector, it wasn't the same from when I came in. So I had to adapt to that transition. It took me a while, and I'm still transitioning because, like you said, it's a lifelong transition. But you have to stay, and I tell people, hey, you have to stay tapped in. You have to stay tapped in. And what you mentioned earlier is that you can't have somebody, 20 years. Oh, yeah, I transitioned 20 years ago.
I'm gonna have to cut
They
you
don't
off,
know how to
King.
transition.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. This is a good topic.
I was gonna see how many times you're gonna say and another thing, and another thing.
Yeah, I'm
I love
sorry.
you. That's why he got his own show. This is why King has his own show. I gotta move on to the next panel member.
Yeah, I forgot the 2 minutes.
I was gonna see. I was like,
keep
there's
my
another
time.
one. There's and another one and another one. I love you, Kings. I said, keep it
And
less
by the
than 2
way,
minutes. He's like, hold my beer. Let's go on to. Let's go to. Go ahead, Cheryl. Did you want to? You have a comment?
no, I love the energy here. You guys are so wonderful. What an honor to be here today. You're
Yeah.
fun. I want to
All
do
right,
this
Joe.
again.
Joe, you you take the reins. We got it. This is what.
All
Listen.
right.
By the way, this is why
Kingsley.
Kings and Joe are gonna have their own shows, because I gave Kings 2 minutes and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna take that and add about 4 more on it to it. All right, Joe, you up?
All right, I'm going to keep this short.
A military term that Kingsley probably didn't learn as a master sergeant was brevity.
There you go. Well,
I'm
I'm
sorry,
okay.
guys. I'm about to this. That's my boy.
So,
All right.
so LJ, the question was to share a time of adapting in my transition. And I'm gonna be completely transparent here. I am still in transition. I'm still adapting almost daily, right? Like, and I think I went down that path that I mentioned earlier, and that's probably why I wanted to ask it, because I think I tried to reinvent the Marine that was in me, right? The transformation that occurred when I joined, which was huge, the huge transformation. I mean, I bought into the culture, to the life, to the service before self, that whole thing. It's just ingrained in me. And then I think I spent probably about 6 years just like trying to dump that pack. And if you guys are regulars in our show, you'll hear me talk about, man, don't dump your pack, just inventory it, because there's so many things that we need to keep as veterans to continue our mission forward. Because I think when we drop too much stuff, and that's what happened with me. So that's where I'm still adapting, the short answer to that. So I really constantly review and bring things back from my service. And then the more I connect, the more I kind of adapt, the more amazing people that I bring into my network. So it's a continuous for me. So that's my adaptation story.
You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna get like the music from like the Oscars or the
Yes,
Grammys.
you have to play that.
And it's gonna be like yeah, Lakeisha. So yeah, my to remind the audience of my original question is how did you adapt, or was there a point where you felt like you had to reinvent yourself during your transition?
Yes, definitely. I'm gonna answer this question very short and sweet, just because we only have a few minutes. Definitely, when I had to adapt, definitely for the transition. I really feel like I'm still transitioning as well, and I'll explain why. I love to write. I love to journal. I began to utilize that. So my giftings, when I was in the military, I was always in admin. So I began to continue to take my journaling and writing and began to incorporate it into a book. So I began to write books. So mind you, I still needed to feed my family and myself, because, that needed to be done. So I still had to lean on the arts in a marketplace. So I still had to go into the government, and I still had to go in there. So I began to going to different platforms in the government, and to began to be a contract specialist and those needs. And that met the needs of financially for myself. So mind you, that was exhausting because it was a lot to deal with when it come into government contracting. So I still had to lean on to other things. So I kept evolving when it came to that. And also began to understand, I get a coach. I began to go to coach, understand, I love to journal. I love to write. And I love to, incorporate it in my books. So I began to speak on my books. So I began to become a speaker when it comes to that. And I began to understand, hey, I can create a great income when it comes to this as well. So I began to evolve and being a podcaster, began to speak on the books, and began to have different, people that I interviewed, and began to enlightening, and that, this is really, really nice. So I began to understand what their amazing journeys was, and I began to talk about their stories. So that was so great for me, and I still do that today. So I say I keep transitioning, keep evolving, because when you do the things you love to do, you want to keep it going. So the momentum began to continue to start. So I'm constantly transitioning because I began to understand even more of myself when it comes to that fact. And it's a great transition, a great journey, because I enjoy doing that, because it really serves the people and it really serves myself. So I land there.
I felt like I was holding a gun to your head, like, get it out right now, hurry up. Y'all can take your time. You ain't gotta rush through it. But hurry up. Hey, I wanted to share this. So and then we're gonna transition back into some of the advocacy work and why I really want to know why. I mean, we probably already touched on this a little bit earlier, but I really want to know why it's so important to have civilian advocates pushing these messaging, right? And so before we go into that, for me, I grew up as a musician, and when I got to the military, I kind of had to change my whole personality. And one of the things that Cheryl said to me, I don't know if she remembers this, but it was one of the reasons why I reached out to her to have her on the show. Is she was like, I heard you on, I think I was on a LinkedIn audio, and she messaged me during the audio. She's like, hey, I love your energy. You're kind of edgy, and I like that. And I was like, huh, because going into the military, you kind of feel that maybe I'm too much of this or too much of that. And I had to figure out who LJ was because I became so ingrained. So I'm not reinventing myself, but rediscovering the things that were intrinsically like motivating to me. People always ask me, like, when we started the podcast, my first podcast, I was doing like 8 episodes a week. And they're like, how are you doing that? I'm like, well, because as a musician, I would practice 5 times a day before class, during class, at lunch, uh, after class, and then on my own pieces when I got home. So I'm just used to just grinding it out. I wasn't a natural musician. I just put the work in, and I feel like that is who I've always been. And when I got into the service, it was very difficult early on because as a kid, my parents or my cousins, like there's a lot of support, but I felt like when you're really grinding it out in the military, not everybody's going to be your friend. And I learned something that was really, like Joe said, be honest with you guys, is I have an approval addiction. So when I got into the service and people weren't going, "Who, yeah, you're doing a great job," it bothers me, early in my career. So I became more and more like, I'm gonna just handle myself. I'm gonna take care of myself, and less of like extroverted LJ. I became more Haywood, and so for me, the transition was figuring out who I was before I got in because I was a good dude. He was a good dude. I think a lot of people should, consider maybe maybe the person that you are now is a reflection of some of the things that you've done and the people you've met, and may not be the best version of who you were at the time. You know what I'm saying? That's for me. So maybe I consider myself reinvented, but I feel like I'm just reconnected with the truth of who I really am. That's what and that's where I wanted to kind of transition into advocacy, because this type of work, to Joe's point, so some of the I dropped my whole pack when I got the service. I was not really interested in doing this type of stuff, but I noticed now that it's important to put this messaging out there. We get messages all to Kings, Joe, Lakeisha. We always get messages, and we appreciate the messages. People, I had a rough week, and just hearing you guys joke about how Kingsley wouldn't stop talking it helped me out. You know what I'm saying? Like, we do this stuff for you. We tease each other because it's like being at the smoke pit. Back in the military, I didn't smoke. Matter of fact, I hated the smoke pit because I'll be one guy out there. Yo, hey, well, I'll be right back. I'm going to the smoke pit, and then so and so go to the smoke pit. Then I'm the only one out there working. I'm like, yo, where did they at? Oh, they at the smoke pit. So, anyways, she's like, I'm a civilian. I don't know what you're talking about, Haywood. All right. So transitioning into go ahead, Cheryl. I saw you come off mic.
I think you went over 2 minutes. I'm just going to say. I think that was like 6.
Boom.
I'm going to call you out. Yes,
I'm a
this is the
hypocrite.
reason I loved you so much, is because you are raw. Kings, you're raw. Joe, I don't know you. Lakeisha, we're going to get you to be raw. Can I just kind of coattail on what you're saying here? One of the things that a lot of you have said to me is I didn't have any agency. Will Allen, go to one of my episodes and listen to him. He's a Marine Corps guy. And he said to me, he's a Marine. And he said, I didn't have personal agency. And I always thought, identity, blah, 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 blah. Agency is the word we're looking at. And as you gain agency, that doesn't mean you drop your pack. Like you said, Joe, you take inventory of it, you add to. I want to say something to you. So I worked as a consultant. I can do anything. I can work for surfboard shapers in California. So my son wanted to play surfer for a minute. So I figured out how to, barter for a surfboard because they're expensive. All the way to hazmat training systems. So HazSim, great company. Owned by a firefighter in Southern California. We came up with a tagline when I was working with them: let no man's ghost return to tell you their training failed. I learned through this company and some of the work I did pro bono in the fire service that training is an everyday thing. Absolutely everyday thing. So the fact that you all feel that and this is the military too, so that's paramilitary, I know you are all training every single day. This is just part of your life. You've got PT, you've got this, you've got that. So I feel if you realize that you have the template that you're just dropping other things in. Do not stop that. Do not stop that. Get your certifications. Just put it towards the civilian world. And you know what? If you get a Scrum Master, aren't an Agile specialist, that is okay. That is okay because you're leaning in towards bettering yourself. And you're learning that that might not be something you want to do. Give yourself some grace. But you are training, you are trained to train, and you're going to train as you get out. If you drop your pack and you leave that whole thing behind you, you're going to sit on the couch. Listen to Bruce Thompson, and he talks about the 6 or 7 months that he sat on the couch. His wife said, pick yourself up and get out there. He's like, the only thing he could do is go to the, play golf by himself. He didn't want to talk to anybody. Angry, mad. He needed to do some mental health work, obviously, but he forgot that he was a Marine. And he said it, and I thought to myself, yep, agency. You're gaining your agency in the civilian workforce and in the civilian space. You're trying to figure it out. And God bless you all. I'm so proud of you. It's such a great thing what you've done, if you've served, if you're currently serving, and if you're trying and you're failing in the workplace, that's service too. That is service too. Thanks, LJ.
No, no doubt, no doubt, 100%. I was messing with some stuff, so I apologize some of the production stuff on there. I did want to dive into how the corporate world and maybe some of these workspaces can facilitate growth and transition for veterans. Have you thought about that? Maybe ideas that companies can do to facilitate this and make it something that is not just I wasn't in the military, so it's not my problem. There is kind of that kind of a feel I feel sometimes.
There is, and thank you for asking that. I had a chance to do a workforce development project for a large DoD prime contractor who's a client of mine. And even though we were really reframing a skill bridge program that is robust, it's existed, they've been participating in it, we needed to streamline it for them because we didn't want staff taking client time away just to participate in the program. We realized, as many of them are former military, that they remembered their transition from military into civilian world, that these folks needed a lot of attention. So reframing it so it works for both the students or the interns or those active duty members who are going through a skill bridge program into the matrix of there. So these are a few things that I noticed, and I saw it over and over again when new SkillBridge folks wandered in from Hiring Our Heroes, great program. So they would walk in and we'd basically give them a badge, and a computer that took about a week to figure out, but a badge, a computer, here's the bathrooms, and then everything was sort of nebulous. Companies, one of the things that, people in the military that I see are coming to you looking for direction. How does this work? What do you want me to do? Until they get out of that, until they gain agency within your space. So as they learn, they want to be right. They, and you got to remember, and I know maybe not a lot of non-military people are listening, but maybe we can sound clip this and throw it out to the universe. Hey, people in corporate America, these folks are not agentic. They are not robots. They're human beings trying to figure it out, but their decisions were based on life and death. So, hey, why don't you remember that as you onboard these folks? And in the recruiting HR world, this is called onboarding. So creating a space for them, a landing strip, so to speak, understanding who they are. Like I said earlier, you guys, this is a tough market. It's tough to find good talent. There's a chunk of them coming out of the military every year that corporations are missing because they just don't have that bridge. They don't know how to attract, recruit, and retain and train the military. So find those companies. There's some great ones. I won't mention them. It's a long list now, but there's those companies that get it. And not to say that every day is going to be easy. It's still going to be a big transition, but you are going to be in an environment that understands you. My goal for all of you is to create awareness on my side of the fence, the civilian side, so that when we're not in the Vietnam era anymore, where people were coming home, like my uncle, Charles Cathy, who reenlisted within a week of coming home because of the reception he received from coming home from the Vietnam War. We're not there anymore. People are understanding more about what you do. And granted, not all of you are special ops, not all of you land movie roles. You might not be a consultant for that big, workout squad that's happening for that TV show, but what you've done is important. And I think civilians are trying to understand that more in the civilian workspace as they see your value. And again, your agency as you create it, your strength, your character, all these things are kind of granted. You wouldn't have been able to make it through the military if you didn't have those things. So just trying to fine tune. But to answer it 4 more times, companies need to create a platform, a bridge, a runway, whatever you call it. We call it onboarding in HR, to onboard people so that they're comfortable, because really this hits their retention numbers. Attrition and retention are the 2 scariest things for a CHRO or a CEO, and that is when people leave. How many people are leaving your company? Why can't you keep them? So you have to go back, you have to build it backwards. Look at the problem and build it backwards, and that's usually when I come in.
Yeah, and I saw a comment. Can we talk about one company that really does it, that really gets it? I don't know if you feel comfortable mentioning any specific companies, but I did want to, and while you think about that, I did want to go into a quick dialogue about some of the stereotypes that veterans seem to receive from my opinion, as far as, and maybe dispel some of them. So one of them that comes to mind is that veterans are broken. And can we talk about that? Like, are some of these misconceptions things that people may not say in front of the veteran, but maybe are in the boardroom? I'm not really sure, because quite frankly, I wear it with pride. So it's interesting to see what people think when you're not in the room, right? What they're saying when you're not in that space.
I don't hear broken, but nobody dare say that around me. I've been an advocate for military since I started, probably my last corporate gig. And as an independent consultant, I walk in the room advocating for you guys every day. But I think what I've heard from specialists, I had Dr. Matt Stanley from the Veterans Transition Research Lab at Duke's Fuqua School of Business. And what he said was that the research that's churning through that, just that organization, a lot of universities have these veteran research centers, is that the word agentic comes up. So I mentioned it earlier. I think that it's a quiet bias, but what happens when we look at people as if they're robots is we put them into roles that are harmful. We underpay them. And because there's a good deal of people that are leaving the military saying, I'll take that job, they may be in, and this is a big issue for me because I get OSHA. I've seen people get hurt. I worked for that hazmat training. I mean, I've worked on the safety side, so I get it. But I also know that it's the easy button for a lot of companies. And I want to empower each one of you. If that's something you want to do, I would love to drive a forklift. I think that's so cool. I want to do it. I want to drive everything that I can with 4 or more wheels. But if you want to be put into a warehouse and you're working in risky scenarios, or you're asked to go into confined spaces because maybe you had that training in the military, be very, very, judge that company as if you were judging your command. Nobody is going to let you go into a confined space if there's 4 or more of you, knowing they can't get you out. Make sure that you are walking into that environment. And if you're not, take steps, call me, do whatever you need to make sure that that's a safe environment. So again, I get a little on my soapbox about this because I think people, the conception, the perception of people coming from corporations and civilian workspaces is that these people will just do anything I want them to because they're yes sir, yes ma'am. They've taken apart and carried guns. They've got a pack on their back, and they're working as one of thousands. So that diminishes the person. And
Wow.
truly, this is a huge DEI issue. And as I stand up in front of corporations and as I have a voice, because this is sort of my subject now, we have a chance to really fix that. And I want to say it's unconscious, but it's been going on for a long time. So for those of you listening, I just never want you to be in an unsafe workspace.
That's awesome.
Wow. Go ahead, Kings. You got...
I just want to say that is so awesome because it just it just hits me to where, in service, we do a lot of things. And if you relate it to the corporate sector, the military gets underpaid, right? By the skill set that we do, right? So you could have somebody that's been in the military for 4 years, but then they're managing multi-million-dollar contracts. They're operating multi-million-dollar vehicles. They're handling multi-million-dollar equipment. So, and that's my question to ask you, Cheryl, since you're on the other side of the table, is that the way how somebody who hasn't experienced the military environment so well, they did it for at a lower cost when they was in the military, so now we could push this agenda. And what I mean by agenda is like, we don't have to offer them the same amount because we know that they will take it. They have done it for that time, and that's what I've experienced, and what I've seen people experience is like, okay, well, you have your military training, or you've been through the military, and they start to tap in to see, okay, how long you've been in, and then they start doing the behind the scenes calculation, and then they ask you, okay, well, are you a veteran? So then they know, okay, well, then you have certain type of stuff that comes with that, right? So they like, well, we could get them at a lower rate, and as a military person, like, okay, well, we're gonna take it because we don't know anything. So I just want to say thank you for bringing that up, definitely from the other side of the table, because I know that's what a lot of veterans and people who is trying to get into the civilian sector is like, man, I know I'm worth more than this, but then do they see that I'm worth more than this? Because they're trying to relate it to, well, you only get X amount of compensation inside the service, but they're not looking at the total I tell people total compensation package. You're coming
Yeah.
as a total compensation package, and that's where you have to highlight. And I tell the veteran is to you highlight that, right? And then once you know your worth, you tap into that.
Yep.
So I think that's where a lot of times we don't really know our worth because we're just being told like, hey, this is what you do, but then we don't realize that's multi-million-dollar equipment. If we used to do it on the other side of in the civilian sector, you'll get being compensated as a CEO rate or whatever, to equal your skill set. So I just want to say thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Kings. You're awesome. I want to add something to the conversation on salary really quick. So, a lot of states are turning over laws that you have to give a range on your job descriptions. Now, again, I've already sworn, so I'm going to say some of these companies are just doing the biggest bullshit. And I see these ranges that are in the $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, and I'm like, really? Are you just saying that's the biggest FU to the federal government or the state who's tried to pass this law to truly become a pay equity state? So these companies are sneaking around. It feels very snarky to me. And an HR executive said to me, well, Cheryl, I mean, we could potentially pay these people within a range. It's like, yes, but you'd put out different requisitions for those different levels. You're not going to pay an entry-level consultant they're not going to have the same job description as a person that's got 10 years of experience. And those 10 years of experience is 10, 20, 30,000 more dollars. You need to write job descriptions that are accurate. If there's a range, please, companies, my Christmas wish from you is to put a thoughtful range, maybe no more than $10,000 or $20,000. Because what happens, folks, and everyone's going to do this, they're going to come out of the military, they're going to see a job pays $100,000, $60,000 to $100,000. They're not going to ask for 60. So you hear these teeters, that person asked for 100. Well, yeah, dumbass, you put $100,000 on your range. And what frustrates me is like, this is the stuff that pisses me off. This is the stuff in corporate America that's like, we're going to have to follow your rules. We're going to game it. We're going to be doing the workaround. And what I want to tell the folks who are dealing with this kind of game playing is steer clear of companies that do this. This is just the beginning of them trying to pull the wool over your eyes. So just be mindful of that. Try and get the recruiters into a thoughtful dialogue about what you need. You don't have to go into the whole details, but and by the way, Kings, you talk about your worth. I've written a whole book. It comes out this year called Unlocking Your Worth. Lots of exercises. The book that's out now has exercises too. Figuring out your worth when you have been in a very transparent pay environment, where when you walk in the room, people know what your pay grade is because of the lapels on your uniform. It is a whole different world out there. You got to fight for $10,000 more than the guy who's doing less than you. So again, another talk for another time, but man, there's just a lot going out there that no wonder you all are so frustrated and so reticent. I wouldn't want it. It's overwhelming. And that's just one of the things that adds to this mix when it comes to trying to figure out the corporate environment is those salary ranges.
Yeah, absolutely. As we're winding down, I wanted to kick it over to Joe and Lakeisha. And by the way, Ms. Cross, if there's any questions or any topics that we haven't gone over before we wrap it up, just please let me know. But yeah, Joe, Lakeisha, please, mic's yours.
Yeah, I actually, what you were just saying was something that it's a thing that I've kind of been realizing as I've gone on my own entrepreneurial experience, like getting out and then kind of trying to do these things that I want to do, because I really, again, I think I mentioned earlier, one of the core things that really has stuck with me is service before self. Right now, I know you had mentioned earlier that we need to really get into the mindset of out of the we into the me. And I think there's a way to do that and still keep that service before self, right? Like to get back. And what you were just talking about, this thing is something that I've noticed, and I just keep thinking that I don't want to say that veterans have like a better idea of that, of sacrifice or anything, because that there's many people that sacrifice, but I do think that we do have an idea of how important it is to give back for whatever we're doing, like how important the collaboration or the community is, and we're willing to do things that others that don't kind of have that insight do. And I think when you were talking about this corporate America and salaries and being paid, it really hit home. I actually was in a summit. I won't mention the name of the companies that were there, but they were like really big on like, oh, we're going to hire veterans and we're going to do this. And then when they started talking about the job descriptions, it was those things that you had mentioned, right? It's the robotic type of stuff, and then also no pathway to grow, because I think that's another thing that veterans recognize, and you just mentioned it now. It's like we know our worth and we know our path to increase that worth, right? Like the military is there's a specific guideline. Now you obviously have to still do some political stuff to get higher promotions, but you know exactly what I need to accomplish as an E1 to get to an E2. And I know exactly what to accomplish as an E5 to get to an E6, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that in the corporate world, not all of them, but in some of those places, one, they've lost the real reason business was initially created. Like the whole reason for business was somebody said, hey, man, I have a solution to a thing that will make my community better. Now I can't do it for free, and I need to have compensation for the time and effort that I put in to grow this, but it's going to help everybody. I think we've lost that a little bit. So, and then again, like veterans knowing that their next step, and I think the corporate world also doesn't have those specific guidelines, or at least I haven't heard or seen that in a lot of the conversations I've had with people out there trying to work, that they don't exactly know where to go. That's why I think in our back comments, I mentioned another term that I think corporate America could really be good at learning is commander's intent, because that's a huge thing for veterans. And I think there's another misconception about the robotic thing, right? Like the commander's intent allows us to be flexible and to make decisions on the fly and still align with what the mission is intended. And I think that's another thing that's missing in the corporate world. Or I could be wrong, and I would love to hear your perspective on that.
I'm happy to talk about that. You know, so many of you are coming up as vetrepreneurs, speakers, writers. Lakeisha's one. You know, your voice is very important, and I think corporate America is listening. Now, not all of corporate America is ever going to listen, but there's just a really new churn happening right now. And this is the time. If you have a story, start a podcast. Call LJ, call me, call Kings, call any of us. Lakeisha, you said you have one. Anyone, Joe, do you have one? I don't know. If you don't have, I mean,
Under
this is
construction.
the time. Yeah, under construction. So this is the time for the independent voice. We've been lied to. We've been hoodwinked. We've gone through a lot of crap as civilians. I'm talking about civilians, and sometimes in the military too, over the last several years. So people are looking elsewhere, and your voice is very, very, very important. And I don't just say that because I have a podcast bringing 100 voices. At one point, I'm going to move on and do something else because I'll have 100 voices of a podcast out there. And I'm going to be digging deeper probably into this community as this grows. But your voice, your independent voice, your leadership style, these all need to be heard. I am blown away at the amount of life coaching and independent thought leaders are coming out of the military. What the military has trained you to do, or sorry, what you have done in the military and the training you have gotten, it wasn't the military doing this to you. It's you getting that information. That's the journey. And I want you to eat just like you did in the military. You got to go to this new PCS. You're PCSing to this weird place. What did you do? You did your research. You knew that assignment, that equipment they're giving you, you're going to have to sell that back, stick that in your storage unit, in your home of record. Don't spend $6 billion to give that back. You'll never use it in this new place. You did your research to know that. So this is the kind of thoughtfulness I want you to move forward with. I want you to do the research through other people, maybe people who've already left the military, veterans. You all say this, and I think it's very true. Reach out to a veteran first. And you might not be in the same business, you might not be in the same industry or even the same state, but they will listen. And a lot of the questions when you're first trying to figure this all out are, how do I do this? And what do I do? And oh my gosh, there's so much. Sometimes it's just that warm voice on the other end. That's why those ACPs, the Honor Foundation, all the mentor-based, I'm not mentioning all of them, but all the mentoring-based organizations that are out there that are providing you people that will just pick up the phone and listen to you are valuable. And take advantage of those things. Do not do this alone. And the last thing I just want to end with, and I know I'm over my time, is that you cannot do this alone. Veteran suicide is so very high. The amount of active duty to transitioning military that are committing suicide and dying it's completely unnecessary. So we can form this framework. We can build the fabric to support you. And I think corporate America needs to put their part in, which is why I'm an advocate. So thank you guys. I appreciate you letting me have my soapbox.
I love it. That was great. I mean, this is good. I wanted to start rapping because we do have the after show. So Ms. Cross, if you're welcome to join us, because that's where I see some comments, some little spicy comments in the comment section that I'm like, all right, yo, Amos, I'm gonna have to holler at you in the after show and get your man. There's people. I like this show because we want to have it more like a radio show. So I like to have different perspectives, different because my experience and somebody's experience that was in 20 years ago, the person who's just joining right now, their experience is going to be completely different than what we're talking about right now. A lot of our information, like Kingsley said, could be potentially outdated to the people who are just getting in, or the guys, what I'm saying? So it's important to have a mix. That's why we're putting this show out there. I see Amos is like, he got the, he know he getting spicy in the chat. He's like, let me see. What are the comments? I put it out here. He said, they're all low. He said, look, man, these are all, I could just see him type it away. Like, yeah, they're all low paying jobs when they go to these events. It's true. There's certain things that he talked about DEI. I really want to get into that because that comment, I don't know if he supports it or doesn't. So I want to know what he's talking about. So is there anything that we haven't covered before I start to wrap it on up, Ms. Cross? Is there anything that you wanted that was on your heart? Because we haven't done this officially. We mentioned it earlier, but you see the scroll below me. I need you to get the book, Civilian Mission, the 3-year guide for military professionals planning civilian careers. It's on Amazon. I posted a link in the comments there. I try to post the link with a photo, but the link in the photo didn't do things, technology. So just hit the link and get the book. Let us know. Just let us know in the comments if you got your copy of it. consider it an investment into your future. A lot of people talk about, like, I hate it when people say nobody told me. But we telling you right now. So if you hear my voice, we telling you right now. So ain't nobody, you get that new guy in process, and well, nobody told me, what we telling you. And if this information was valuable to you, I encourage you to repost this, tag another veteran, tag a military spouse, tag your uncle, your auntie, your cousin. Just joking. I hope you guys got value out of this. I want to let's go ahead and wrap this thing on up, because we'll be in the after show. So today's conversation with Ms. Cheryl Cross, a leading voice in the military. I'll give you guys I call it the right voice. Ready? A leading voice in the military. A leading voice in the military, with profound insights, helping transitioning military veterans into the civilian space, triumph with their goals. See, I'm not done, guys. I'm not done. Ready? The true nature of transitioning is an ongoing process. And today, Cheryl Cross shared her insights, and I can't do the whole thing. All right,
It's
y'all.
so hard.
I hope you guys got fun with this. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. By the way, do me a favor. Wish Ella, my fiance, a happy birthday. It's her birthday today.
Oh.
And I'm in trouble for doing the show. All right. I promised her that I would do the show. I'm joking. She's on the phone with her sister, and they're having a good time. So I made her breakfast. I tried to make her breakfast, and then she kicked me out of the kitchen because I was burning shit up. But I did attempt. I made the attempt. I promise you. She probably can't hear me talking. My voice carries. So anyhow, wish her happy birthday for me, and in the chat, just say happy birthday, Ella. I'll be sure to let her know and show her that. I love you guys. Have a blessed rest of your day. We'll see you guys in the after show. If you want the link to the after show, if you're in the community chat, we'll post the link there. I believe Jeff will be joining us, hopefully. And God bless you guys. We will see you next time here on the Veterans Club. I'm just stalling for time. I'm trying to find my notes. All right. See ya. Bye.